Today we're going to be learning about finding surface area of prisms and cylinders. First off, quick reminder, a prism will have two bases. So a lot of times you see two triangles, the rest are rectangles. That's going to be a triangular prism. Those two faces will have to be congruent in order to be called bases, and they must also be parallel. So sometimes we'll see a net drawn. So this will be something like this. So a net is basically what an unfolded shape would look like. So this is an example of a net for a rectangular prism. If I fold all those sides back up, they will make a rectangular prism. What we're going to talk about today is finding the surface area of the shape. Basically, we could come through on this picture and find the area of each of these shapes, add them all up, and that's surface area. But what we're going to learn today is we have some shortcuts. We have some ways that will help us go a little bit faster, and that really is down here. There's a nice little formula that we'll be talking about. Another thing we'll talk about is lateral edges. So I mentioned a triangular prism earlier. If I have a triangular prism, and I'll just do a quick sketch. So if that's my triangular prism, the lateral edges would be these edges here, just around the sides, not including the bases. Sometimes it'll say find the lateral area. You would just find the area of these three rectangular sides in this case. Most of the shapes we're going to be dealing with will be right prisms, meaning we have a lot of right angles where the base meets the lateral edges. So this will be a right angle, this will be a right angle, this will be a right angle, and so forth at the top. But sometimes we'll talk about shapes that are not right, and they are called oblique. That means they're leaning. So this would be a triangular prism that is leaning. So it might look something like this. So it's kind of leaning to the side. Up next, we got to talk about the formula for the surface area a little bit. So we have this letter, big B, and it's important to understand big B means area of the base. It doesn't mean just base, like a number on the base. It means find some area, find the area of the base. Notice it's capitalized, just like this P is capitalized. Capital P means perimeter of the base. So in this case over here, I would find the perimeter by going through and adding up all the side lengths to find the perimeter of that triangle. Last thing would be height. Now height is pretty easy to find. It's how far one base is stretched to another. So that would be an example of height for this triangular prism. Over here for oblique, most of the time we'll only be doing obliques with volume, but the height would be this measurement for oblique. Cylinders are even easier. And once again, when we talk about cylinders, we can have right cylinders and we can have oblique cylinders. Right cylinders are pretty easy to identify because their bases are kind of right over each other, like that. So oblique, once again, they're kind of offset, kind of leaning over. The right cylinder formula is right here. This is another one you need to know. It says 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. So it relates back to this surface area formula. And once again, I didn't discuss this much, but 2b means it has two bases. So that would be like the top and bottom bases, top and bottom bases. And then ph, basically it's saying how far around this shape and how much was that stretched up? How far around the shape and how much was that stretched upwards? After that, we can go through and find the surface area of a shape. So this first one is a triangular prism. So you have to be able to identify it. Now it helps you out by giving you the name, but you should notice that it's a triangular prism. It has two triangles, those are the bases, and then the rectangular lateral edges going around the sides. So we're going to use the formula that says surface area equals 2 big B plus big PH. So the things we need to figure out are area of the base, perimeter of the base, and the height. Once again, the height isn't really how tall it is in its current position, it's how far was the triangle stretched to the other triangle. So that's usually the easiest. This triangle is stretched to this triangle back this direction. How far is that direction? Oh, that number is right here. It's the 7. Perimeter of the base is also pretty easy, so we can add up the numbers around the edges of this triangle. 3, 4, and 5 are the numbers we would need to add up. 3 plus 4 plus 5. So that's 12. Now another part that people have trouble with is the area of the base. So we got to find the area of this triangle, and for some reason some people forget the formula for area of a triangle. That is 1/2 base times height. So 1/2. Now we got to decide which of these numbers are my base and height. So they are the numbers that meet at the right angle. So here's the right angle, it can be transferred over. So what numbers meet on those sides? Those are the 3 and the 4. So 1/2 times 4 times 3, so that is 6. Now I have all the terms that I need to substitute into our formula. So we can write out surface area equals 2 times 6 plus 12 times 7. So when we do that, we end up getting 96. Now we have to be careful and make sure we write units on our answers. So go back, find the units, they're in feet. Now this is surface area. You need to remember that area is always going to be units squared. So we say feet squared. And that's how you find the surface area of a triangular prism. That's one of the harder shapes to do. Up next is a cylinder. I like the cylinders because usually they're the easiest. So let's recall its formula. It's 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. Now in this one you can go ahead and substitute your numbers without doing a lot of extra work like we did on the triangular prism. So we can say 2 pi, find the radius in the picture. The radius here is 6. So we say 6 squared plus 2 pi times 6 times the height. And the height is really obvious right here. How much was it stretched circle to circle? That's right here. That's that 4.9. And then we can type that in. From there, we type it directly in the calculator just like this, and we get 410.9. That's just rounded to the nearest tenth. It didn't say how to round, so I'll take that for now. Most of the ones we'll do will be rounded to the nearest tenth, or it'll specify how to round. Don't forget our units. They're in centimeters, so surface area will say centimeters squared. This next example gets a little more difficult. Now we're going to find a missing piece on a shape. So we're going to once again start off with our formula. That's a good place to always begin. So 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h. And then we're going to substitute what we know from our problem. So we know the radius is 4. So I can plug that in anywhere I see an r. And then we got to remember that we don't know our height, so we can just put times h. The other thing we do know is our surface area. That's that 168.09. And now it's just algebra. So we just need to solve this problem now. So 2 pi 4 squared, that's just 100.53. Now I'm going to simplify this 2 pi 4. So we get 2 pi 4 to be 25.13. And we got to bring down our h. From there it's just algebra. We then need to subtract 100.53 from both sides, and then we're going to divide by 25.13. So dividing will then end up giving us the height is approximately 2.68 meters. Now I didn't write meters squared because this is just a dimension of height, and height is not a unit square because it's not in area. Up next, we're going to try some exercises to practice these once again. It says, find the surface area of a right rectangular prism with a height of 8 inches, length of 4, width of 5. So for some people, you'll need to draw this out. I'll go ahead and do a quick sketch. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll give you an idea of what we're looking at. So it looks something like this. From there, I can label my dimensions. So this would be our height of 8, which it says right here, a length of 4, and a width of 5. Now I went back and put my dimensions on it as well. From there it's much easier to visualize. You don't always have to draw it, but a lot of times it does help. From there we're going to write down our formula. So surface area is 2 big B plus PH. And then we're going to find our B, P, and H. I like to start off with the easiest one, which is height. Here it's pretty easy. Our height is just 8. It told us that up here in the prompt. From there, we need the perimeter of the base. Now, a lot of times I like to go through and highlight the base, so I only focus on that piece for my capital letters. So I highlighted this bottom base that has my units on it. My perimeter, I just add the outside pieces. 4, 5, 4, 5. So that's going to be 18. I also need to find the area of the base. So capital B, once again, means area of the base. So how do I find the area of this rectangle? 4 times 5. Now I have everything I need to substitute into our equation. So I can write down surface area equals 2 times, this is where I use the big B, which is 20, plus 18 times 8. Then we can see what that equals. So that equals 184 inches squared. Remember, we put square units anytime we see the word area. Later on we'll do volume, and that has different units. I'll go ahead and warn you, this next one is a little more challenging. This is a hexagonal prism. So what we need to do is still use our prism formula, which says 2B plus pH. So I'll get that going. So once again, we need our area of the base, perimeter of the base, and our height for this picture. Now luckily, it gives us some helpful information over here. It gives us our height, so that part is easy. It also gives us S, which means side length. So the side length is 4. So then I can easily find my perimeter. If all these are 4s, because it's regular, so all the way around, so that's going to be 4 times 6. And then we need to find the area of the base. Now this is the hardest part because you got to remember back to finding the formula for this regular shape. And I'll go ahead and give that to you. The area of a regular shape is 1/2 apothem times number of sides times side length. Thankfully, we have a lot of this information in the prompt. I'm going to go ahead and write down 1/2. The apothem, A, is already given to us. Here it is in the picture. Later on, you may be having to solve for that piece. So that's the 3.5. Times N, which is the number of sides. We just talked about that a minute ago. It's a hexagon, so it has 6 sides. Times S, which is our side length. And once again, that was given. That's a 4. Now we just need to type it into the calculator. That ends up being 42. And now we can plug everything we need into our formula. Writing these terms out, then I can plug them into the calculator and I end up getting 252. And I didn't put units up here in the prompt, so you just put U squared, standing for units squared. So up next we have this prompt that says, find the height of a right cylinder with radius of 7 feet, surface area of 392 pi square feet. Now I like having a little visual, so I just drew this real quick. And then I'll label it. So the radius is 7. We don't know our height. But we are given our surface area, so we got to remember that. Now I'm going to write out the formula. Next we can substitute what we know. So we know our surface area, that was 392 pi. We're going to write down our 2 pi. Once again, we know our radius of 7, so that can go in for r squared. Then we have 2 pi RH, so there's our radius again, and we don't know that height. So we're going to be solving for h, just like we did earlier. So first off, we'll type in 2 pi 7 squared on the calculator and simplify that piece since it's just an. So I simplified that term. I left it as a decimal. Now it would be nice to keep it in terms of pi, but a decimal is okay for now. We'll talk about leaving it in terms of pi later. Next I'm going to do 2 pi 7 and leave it with h. So I get 43.98. with an H. From there, we only have 2 steps remaining. We need to subtract the 307 from each side and then divide by 43.98. So I went ahead and subtracted, got 923.62. I'm then dividing by that 43.98 to get it to cancel out, and end up with a final answer of height is approximately 21 units. And once again, the units are in feet.